The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Candace Owens, the American conservative commentator, political activist, and author. You are the founder of the Blexit Foundation, the organization dedicated to driving conservative principles into urban communities. You also host The Candace Owens Show and have interviewed Vice President Mike Pence, Representative Dan Crenshaw, and Jocko Willink. You've spoken at over 60 universities, appeared on Fox News over 250 times, and have established yourself as a leader among the growing youth conservative movement. Your forthcoming book, Blackout, addresses how liberal ideals harm African Americans and hinder their ability to live the American dream. Candace, welcome to London Real.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great to have you here. Before we get started, I want to just announce that we are now streaming on our brand new Digital Freedom platform, which is a censorship-free, independent broadcasting system that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and it's available exclusively through our website at londonreal.tv. Candace, I pledge to you that, and everyone watching us, that none of this conversation will be edited, censored, removed, or banned, and that anyone in the world can watch the full version of this episode free at londonreal.tv/Owens. Thanks to the generous donations of over 25,000 people around the world that I affectionately call the London Real Army. For anyone wanting to become a founding member of the Digital Freedom platform, they can go to londonreal.tv/freedom to donate and fight with us on the front lines to protect our human rights. We at London Real have been a platform for free speech since 2011. And Candace, I'm excited to have you here today. Maybe we start talking about censorship to start. I know you're not allowed to tweet right now, and I know you've had a few bouts with this in the past. Maybe you can give me some advice as well. How do you feel about not being able to talk and freedom of speech?
You know, there's two sides of it. You know, on one side of it, it's definitely frustrating. I obviously have a very big platform, and I think that right now it is incredibly important that we hear dissenting voices from the mainstream narrative more than ever, especially when there's so much confusion. And I think a lot of the conflict that we're seeing today is the narrative versus people's gut instincts. And for a long time, I think as human beings, we have been moving further and further away from trusting our gut instincts to say something doesn't feel right or something is wrong. In many ways, our subconscious works a lot quicker than our conscious, right? And everyone kind of knows that this coronavirus thing just feels weird. Something feels wrong. And so people are pursuing dissenting voices, people that are just asking questions like me. I haven't presented myself as an expert on anything other than common sense. And I've been asking questions from the beginning before it was okay. And people don't like that. So now that we're seeing the measures that are being taken to censor not only people that really, I'm just a commentator, I ask questions, I consider myself a regular person, but we're seeing doctors being banned from the internet. We're seeing, you know, those two doctors, I can't remember their names, Dr. Erickson, that were just talking about what they're seeing in their hospitals. Banned, censored from YouTube. The good side of that is that it lets you know that more and more people are waking up. And when I say waking up, I mean waking up to the fact that their ideas that they have assumed to be their own aren't really their own ideas. They've been somewhat programmed. And the second that they start to question that programming and say, wait a second, is there maybe a different, something else going on? Is there maybe a different narrative or some other information I'm missing? They're shut down, they're censored, and they're banned. So I see the bad side of it, but I also see the good that comes out of it. But I am also an eternal optimist.
Well, me too. You know, I've been bumping into people on the streets recently. I just bumped into two young men. I must have been in their teens or early 20s. And I just pull out my phone and I'm like, what do you think's going on? And they're like, you know, we know something is happening that we're not being told. It's like, we just don't think it adds up. And that's why when we have someone like David Icke that comes on, and I don't agree with everything he says, but they're like, we'd like to hear some other opinions. And I agree. I think people in their gut know that something's off, they can't necessarily process with their logical mind. Also, they've been fed a whole narrative via, social media, internet, programming, whatever. So of course they would be conflicted, but there's a craving for an alternative message. And we had these 3 streams with David Icke. I called them Rose Icke 1, 2, and 3. The second one, about 4 weeks ago, it was the second largest YouTube live stream in the world, second only to President Trump that day. And on Sunday, we had 1.3 million unique people watch, which was the biggest live stream in human history of a conversation. So I always tell YouTube, clearly people want to hear this message, but there's a small minority that says it should be censored. So it's strange.
And it's strange because if something is true, if they really believe the mainstream that they are telling the truth, there's no reason to censor a dissenting voice, right? So let's take, an actual conspiracy theory that I think is pointedly ridiculous. There are people that are saying they're doing this because they're going to change the batteries in the pigeons, right? I've heard this one on the internet. I'd be like, this is so crazy. Like they're going to take, some people believe that there are batteries in pigeons. I actually can't even talk about the details of that conspiracy theory.
This is new to me. So batteries in pigeons. Okay.
Yeah, but would I be upset if somebody went on a platform and talked about batteries and pigeons? No, because I don't believe that to be true, right? So if you are on the side of truth, somebody dissenting with something that's false and that you think can be verified to be untrue wouldn't alarm you. It wouldn't make you nervous. Censorship only happens when you feel that you need to control a narrative because some other truth might get out. And I think that is what we're seeing the mainstream people start to balk at, realizing that they don't have as big of a reach, realizing that, in our country, we have a person named Andrew Cuomo's brother, I can't think of his name, on CNN, who is pretty much putting himself in quarantine and saying he's dying of coronavirus and he coughed so hard that his tooth fell out. And it just doesn't seem real. It seems like theater. And I think that people are starting to question those people, and they don't like that because they've had so much power for such a long time. And that power didn't really begin to falter until 2016, until the Brexit vote, until the Donald Trump vote, which they saw as a tremendous disobedience to the mainstream narrative. The mainstream narrative was that if Brexit went through, the UK would collapse, right? It was all going to be over. They were going to YOLO their economy. The mainstream narrative was that if Donald Trump won, racism was going to be back. The Klan was going to go back and dust off their old uniforms, throw them back on and ride against Black people. And we were going to be back in Africa or back in chains, and that didn't happen. And because of that, people are moving further and further away from believing the mainstream narrative, and that's what we're kind of seeing play out right now in the world.
Interesting. So this is kind of their last grasp for power that they used to have that they can see literally just dissolving in front of their eyes.
Right. And we're seen as disobedient. I mean, look at your platform, the London Real TV. You shouldn't be allowed to exist, right? My platform, you used to have the means of being sanctioned by the mainstream people. You want to get a job at CNN or the BBC. Well, now it's the internet age, right? And we're able to create our own content and to have these conversations and get millions and millions of views. And just a tweet, my one tweet that I put out dwarfs all of CNN's views in one day, right? That's really scary to them and to the powers that be, if you will.
Yeah, there's a regulator here called Ofcom, which strangely enough also regulates the 5G licenses, which strangely enough said the one thing that couldn't be talked about was 5G and coronavirus in the same sentence. Again, why are they, banning something that might not have some truth? But my point is that they can regulate the radio stations and the television stations to where they can literally force them to apologize if they say anything like the terms I just mentioned. And yet an article was written recently about London Real, and yeah, we have more YouTube subscribers than The Guardian, the Daily Mail, than all of these other places. And it's just been strange to watch this power play. And some people say YouTube's being pressured. Sometimes people say it's actually them, but we're kind of in the middle of it. And
YouTube is Google, so it's not even about being pressured. Google is a business, and this isn't that hard for people. People like to think about this stuff and call certain things conspiracy theories. I say now in 2020, calling something a conspiracy theory is like in 2016 calling everybody literally Hitler. The sentence is just played out. Let's stop calling everything conspiracy theory. Google is a business, okay? Google is a very big business, a far-reaching business, and Google has interests. If I was a business owner, I wouldn't want to put out things that could possibly harm my business. That's common sense, right? And that's being business smart. I don't knock Google for that. But for people to think that, it's a conspiracy theory that YouTube censors voices that are against, the ideas that they want to put forth, no, that's called running a business. And so just like there's marketing for a business, there's also anti-marketing. And a lot of what we see today can really, again, just if you think about it in terms of common sense, it's much easier to grasp than to wrap yourself into this idea, oh, it's a big conspiracy theory, it's a cabal, it's this. I just say, it's common sense. There are people that have business interests, and there are many people out there that are fighting to protect their global business interests, and that's that.
Yeah, and they are protecting it very strongly. And we're dissenting voice. Honestly, 10 minutes before I just got on with you, we just got our first strike on YouTube. So for the next 7 days, we're not allowed to live stream. I was going to live stream the beginning of this on YouTube, and now I can't.
Congratulations.
And yeah, exactly. And now we can't upload any content. So, I've been on the platform for 9 years. We put out content that changes people's lives, 500 million views. And now I got dinged for some video that was uploaded 8 months ago that they said was hate speech. It's like literally out of the blue. And I'm like, I'm on the phone with a guy like, are you joking? Like, if you're gonna do this, just do this. But like, come at me from the front, not from the back. But, again, I'm just understanding that, like you said, it is a business decision from them, and I am kind of in the way if we're against a narrative that probably loses them money.
Right, and I agree with you. It's the virtue signaling behind the decisions that's actually more frustrating. Like saying, "Oh, we banned this person because they're a Nazi sympathizer." Some crazy conclusion, or we banned this content because it goes against our guidelines of harassment. Just say that you don't like the person or the idea. You don't need to pretend that you're, this high moral platform that is banning people for any other reason than it's a dissenting opinion that goes against your business interests.
Yeah, and he repeatedly said, we don't ban people, we ban the message, even though they just deplatformed him a few days ago. This is David Icke. And this just happened now, and I just was on the phone, and I said, so you ban people, basically. This is just the thing. It was like no comment. But I made a vlog this morning saying, YouTube said, oh, you have to follow WHO and NHS policy. If you're against the common science, then it gets taken down. And I said, okay, this is the same organization that said flights from China should be okay when the president said it wasn't okay. So should he be banned? This is the same organization that said masks were not necessary when Governor Cuomo said they were. So should he be banned? And I started asking these obvious questions. And yeah, there's not a lot of answers.
You'll fall down a deep hole if you go down, if you do that, because I did the same thing this week. Facebook sent me a thing saying that they had marked something as a false story that I had said, and it was 100% true, verified by the CDC even, that they're including in the count of COVID deaths people that had never been tested for COVID-19. Now again, I said all of this stuff earlier before it became mainstreamed, accepted as mainstreamed, and so then I go to look at what Facebook uses as their fake fact checker. They use a company that's called Lead Stories, leadstories.com. For people watching this, I suggest you go look into Lead Stories. It's a company, an LLC that was put together in California, run by two men, and the main writer who checks the stories is a 26 years former editor of CNN. So that they are the people that are deciding whether or not what you post is fake news. It's obviously not a non-biased fact-checking site. And I wrote to Facebook, and I've been in communication with them, and I've said to them, look, I don't want to go down this route. I already know that, last year a story was broken that Facebook had a list of people that were considered hate agents, and it accidentally leaked to the press, and they had me on a separate tab called extra credit, an extra credit assignment. They're looking to ban people that they believe have too much influence. My typical just talking on Facebook videos gets 10 million views of me just talking about my ideas, my beliefs, which should be allowed because I am an individual, I am a person, and you don't have to believe in what I think, but I should certainly be allowed to express it if Facebook believes itself to be a utility. But they don't, and so it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I don't think it ends well for big tech. I think that they're starting to see a lot of cracks, and the truth is, and I always, caution them to remind themselves that when you actually censor people, the people that were following the people that were censored don't instantly become converted to the other idea. In fact, in many ways, they dig their heels in, right? So people, for example, using Alex Jones, who has a massive platform and got banned and censored from basically everything. People that were InfoWars followers didn't go, oh, well, I guess what he was saying wasn't true, and I should, suddenly be on the left. In fact, they dig their heels in, and they very much believe in what he's saying about censorship and them trying to shut down dissenting voices. So it does help people that are conservative like me, or people, I don't know that you're conservative, but people that are being banned, it helps them in a way that people start to realize that something's wrong, because people, like, again, whether you agree with them or not, should be allowed to put forth their ideas.
Yeah, the interesting move that Facebook put out the other day was that anybody who had liked or shared a video that was banned would now get re-educated in their feed with the scientific proof against that. I was like, wow, that's really next level. They would, re-education camps. I just was fascinating to see them actually state that they would do that.
It's gotten really scary, really out of hand, and it really makes you question whether or not we live in a free country. And that's the scarier part. And those are the things that I'm actually concerned with, is knowing that, I'll be starting a family soon. And is this the America that I recognize? To be able to have an idea, to be able to say something. You have a right not to agree with me, but you don't have a right to shut down my speech.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm from San Diego, and it's like, I think it's in our DNA as Americans, where there's always healthy debate, and there's always people saying things about the president. And, that's what we grew up as. And now not being able to do that, just because it's digitally, I still know it's wrong. And I've been talking to some lawyers here who are making the case now that apparently there's precedent where something like the London Stock Exchange, which is a private company that acts as a public utility, still has to respect the human rights laws in those countries. And he said even more so during the coronavirus crisis, it is more of a public utility because it's actually conveying information that would protect the health of the public. So we might be going down that route. I know that's a difficult route. I know, PragerU went down that route a few years ago with YouTube, but I feel like something has to be done to move this forward legally.
Yeah, and I think part of that is also just that conservatives need to start looking and diversifying the technology that we use. I mean, something very small that I did is I don't use Google, I use DuckDuckGo, right? On my and they don't have as much information populated because they need more users, and then information becomes populated. But the difference in searching on something on Google versus something on DuckDuckGo, and this is actually what made me get rid of Google. So I had searched. I actually wanted to just know the total number of Black people in the world, right? So I Googled, what is the total number of Black people in the world? The first 10 hits that came up were Black people are dying of coronavirus. I was just retyped it in there again, being like, okay, maybe they suddenly thought that I typed it in again, looked at what I typed, how many Black people are there worldwide? And everything was how many Black people are dying of coronavirus worldwide. And I went, okay, I can't do this propaganda anymore. So I switched to DuckDuckGo, instantly got an answer. And I was like, okay, I'm done with that. It's just a small thing to do, but it just made me feel like a little bit more in charge of there is something else other than Google out there, and I can use a different database. And so I do.
And so what was Google doing? What did that teach you about that platform?
Well, it's what I've known for a while, which is, and obviously what a big part of my platform is getting, Black Americans in particular to realize that there is just so much fear mongering and so much race baiting. And in America, the issue is just that, they want Black Americans to always be fearful ahead of an election. In 2016, it was the Black Lives Matter thing. And in 2020, it's the coronavirus is going to kill you faster. And the evil white men don't care. And so they are just trying to force feed to Black Americans that somehow this virus is racist and it's hurting us first and foremost. And if we don't shut down everything and Black Americans don't go out and protest and, demand that our society is shut down, which is, using Black Americans as pawns, as usual, against their political opponents, then we're going to suffer. And it's pointedly ridiculous and foolish, but Google is definitely helping because you can't even look up how many Black people there are in the world without hearing about how the racist coronavirus is going to get us all.
Wow, and that fear narrative is so powerful. I mean, I guess we're seeing that now with coronavirus. And look, and I definitely want to come back to some of the points you just mentioned. Just to close out the censorship thing, how do you feel when you get banned from a platform for Twitter for a week, or advice to us when we're getting banned from platforms? Do we just roll with it, find other ways, diversify, know that your audience will always be there if you give them a way to find you?
Yeah, your audience will always be there. And if anything, the more people that get censored, the bigger your audience grows. And as I said, the people that follow me and people that are fans of my work, they know exactly what I'm about. They've been with me on this journey for the last 3 years. They're not going to fall for stupid articles saying that Candace is a conspiracy theorist because she doesn't want to get the coronavirus vaccine. And to remain optimistic, I genuinely believe that there has been almost a quickening in terms of people that are really awake to things, people that have been on the left, have disagree with everything that I've said, but have questions about what's going on right now with this coronavirus. And just like everybody else, they're being smeared and libeled, and they're not allowed to have questions. They're being censored. So the good thing is that eventually the scales tip over, and there's just more of us than there are of them. And I think that I'm seeing actually more of a coming together of people on both sides of the political spectrum in terms of, people losing their jobs and not being able to understand why. And I will say this, just to wrap on the coronavirus front, if this was a real apocalypse and this was a real plague, you wouldn't need the news to tell you. Your common sense would kick in. If there's a zombie apocalypse, it's not because CNN broke the story, it's because it's outside, it's real. Because we would all know someone that, was healthy walking outside and boom, coronavirus got them. Instead, what we're seeing is that the media is trying to force us to believe this, right? And they've been trying to do this for months, and people are outside protesting. Let me tell you, if coronavirus was as deadly and horrible as they were saying from the beginning, most people wouldn't be outside protesting. They'd be terrified. I would be terrified if I knew people that were perfectly healthy dropping like flies. I know none. And this has gone on long enough, and there's been too many anomalies that people are starting to question the narrative, are starting to demand we reopen, because we're realizing that this has really been something that has become a media hoax. Not that the virus isn't real, but that the impact of the virus and the deadliness of the virus has been really made out to be something that it isn't. And fortunately, we're suffering in other ways because of that hyperbole.
Well, why do you think it is being made up to be something bigger than it is? Is it, a series of mistakes, or, estimates that were wrong, or they're weird things pulling things in different ways, or why?
I don't know. I will say, it's hard to answer the question why, but what I can say is that the people, going back to the 2016 election, and I'm talking about Brexit and America, there was just a major shift in power, and the media was just insistent that the UK stay a part of the European Union. The media was insistent that America hire Hillary Clinton. And you're watching both of the media at that time in both countries. It was just fascinating to see that they just would not allow a dissenting opinion, the smearing of everybody as racist, as sexist, as homophobes, for even, for wanting freedom. I mean, that was really what the Donald Trump election was about. We just realized that we were losing something here in America. Now, the people that have been fighting that, even after you guys won the Brexit vote, and even after we won the Trump vote, those people still fought to reverse it for years after, and they lost again, right? And they keep losing. And I think that, one thing that I've realized in all of these measures that have been taken is that the socialists of this country have been gaining a lot of wins, more than anything. What the socialists in America have wanted was government dependency, right? In a socialist state, government dependency is crucial. It's all about you keep coming to the government is the only person that can be your savior. It's about not allowing people to have the money to start their own businesses, because that empowers the individual. And socialists don't believe in the individual; they believe in the state. And what we're seeing in terms of the power that these governors have been executing, signing executive orders, you can't go to work, arresting people for walking in the park. I mean, this is crazy stuff. This is stuff that you only see when you study human history and you look at communist states. And to see them do that and to take that much power back instantly from the people should be unnerving to everybody. And, I think everybody is correctly calling out just sort of this strange appearance that Bill Gates is being forced upon us in a way that makes no sense. He is not an elected official. He is not a doctor. And yet we are being told that his opinion about everything should be listened to. And if you don't believe what Bill Gates is saying, that you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. If we were having a computer virus, I might want to hear what Bill Gates has to say about it. But he is not the person that I want to hear from. I want to hear from those doctors that were censored from YouTube. I want to hear from all of the other doctors and surgeons that are making videos and that are being censored. Their opinions are of more value to me than of Bill Gates and the CDC, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've had a few doctors on recently, and honestly, last night at 1 a.m, 5 of the videos were removed from my YouTube channel. And this is a doctor giving research and giving a logical opinion of why he believes, you don't need a mask, why he believes the COVID-19 test is flawed because it tests for just random RNA, these basic things, but that's just not allowed in the narrative. So it's interesting to watch. Do you think we just need to get back to work and just
100%.
okay.
I've been saying that since the beginning. I said it before it was popular. So I was getting hit by the left and the right because, like I said, my common sense. I travel normally 5 days a week for work. I'm in airports, out of airports, shaking hands, doing speeches. And if I knew that if the virus is deadly, as they were saying in the beginning, I would have been the first one dead. Right. So it's just the way that I travel, and I'm a big people person. And then there's just the whole concept of immunotherapy. You have to be exposed to germs. That is the way that your system naturally fights things. So the irony here is that the same people that are telling you to wear a mask, don't touch anybody, don't see anybody, are the same people that are going to be telling you to introduce the germs into your body when they come up with some vaccine. So none of that really makes any sense. And what we're going to naturally see, again, common sense, is that once people do get back to work, a lot of people are going to get sick because they've been in isolation, because you haven't been exposed to germs, because you haven't been allowed to get outside, because you haven't felt natural sunshine, the things that your body needs, So I've done as much as I can to be outside. I have not worn a mask anywhere except for when I absolutely had to go to the grocery store because they had a police officer at the door. A police officer at the door at a grocery store, that is communist. That is not freedom. Okay. And I genuinely say to people, if you are terrified and you really believe this is apocalypse, I recommend you stay home. It's 2020. You can order everything online. You can order your groceries online, your food to your door. There is no reason for you to go outside. You should be allowed to stay home. People that are not afraid of this virus, like me, should be allowed to get to work. And if we get sick, that's on us. People that don't want to work should work, and people that want to stay home should stay home. It's really that symptom. That's what it means to be free. It's the freedom to make decisions, even if they turn out to be bad decisions.
Amen to that. And I decided early on, maybe 8 weeks ago, that look, I was happy to try to get it. I didn't think I was going to die from it. So I started looking at it just with a different lens. And so I was just like, okay, I'm fine with this. And just to watch people standing 2 meters apart, these lines outside of grocery stores, and Uber drivers that look terrified with these masks on. And I'm just like, okay, if that's what you want to do, but I just don't buy into any of it. And I don't know, it's just been a different perspective. And I've been here every single day at work and with a skeleton team of people that were willing to be here and keeping distance if they wanted to, but we just kept moving. And I guess as of Monday, we're relaxing some of the things here in Britain, and I can't wait, honestly, for everybody to get back to work. The economic impact of this is just going to be absolutely brutal, and no one saw this, no one calculated this, and it's going to rip people apart.
Yeah, I'd just like to mind, the British people that a few generations ago, you guys were drinking during the Blitz.
Yeah.
During the London Blitz, they were in the bars.
Yeah, theaters were open too.
It's just like, it's not who we are. It isn't who we are. We don't cower in the face of fear, even when there's a real threat. I mean, not to hit a sore spot, my British followers, but even during the Revolutionary War, that was fought during a smallpox breakout. So it's just to see this, just a few years, a few generations, to see what the people who stand on freedom, the ideas of freedom, have become. That's something that really doesn't sit right with me. And I think that we have become increasingly less courageous as the years have gone by. We've become obsessed with the concept of living forever. People are like, you want grandmas to die. You don't care if 80-year-olds are dying. And I say, you do know the average life expectancy is 76. If I make it to 80, great. Gosh, I mean, a couple of decades ago, you had no shot, right? And now we are so bratty. We think that we have a right to live forever. And that's not a possibility. If there's one thing that I can promise everyone, it is that we are not going to make it out of this thing called life alive, and we have to be more comfortable with that, in this new industry of Botox and plastic and how can I be younger and live forever. There's an element of this underlying level of narcissism that I also see when I think about this situation and the fear that you're seeing people exercise. It's just that there's a little bit of narcissism in it. I should be allowed to live forever no matter what. And if I have to shut down all of society so I can live one extra year, then so be it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point that I hadn't thought about. That, yeah, we somehow feel like we're entitled to 150 years. And then also, we're most of our life making horrible decisions about our health. And now we're like, okay, now I'm going to wear a mask. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't also have type 2 diabetes. Maybe you shouldn't be smoking, and maybe you shouldn't be doing these other things. So yeah, there's a lot of arguments. And look, I was here for the 2007 bombings, and what I was so impressed with was the next day, Candace, the Brits got back to work. And I was like, wow, this is a resilient people that had been bombed in 1940 in the Battle of Britain, and they know how to really, come back and bounce back. And yet there was a survey done here a couple days ago that said 68% of Brits would rather lose their job than come back and potentially get infected. And there was another survey that said we actually scared the public too much. There's going to have to be another campaign to encourage people to come back to work. So again, that whole fear narrative just went too far. And I don't know, I just hate seeing it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I actually watched World War II in color, which is a Netflix series, and it's incredible to go back and watch it and to look at the young faces of these boys. Speaking of the Battle of Britain in America, the Battle of Midway, and they were so young. I mean, 18, 19 years old, knew they were flying into death. Talking about the Battle of Midway, the British people that were flying during the Battle of Britain. If you look at those pilots' faces and you realize that they knew they were going to die, they knew they were going to die. I mean, their chances, the unbelievable statistic that they put out there was like a 75% chance of death, or maybe it was even higher. And then you look at today, and I just think that generally, and I talk a lot about this on my show about masculinity, how we're just seeing a major shift. And it's the coddling of the West, the coddling of the Western mind. And the thing that should alarm people is that the way that we're raising people, more feelings, more emotions, want to live forever, want to be young forever, is not the way that people in the East are raising people. And we are competing in a global economy. And I do feel that we are no longer raising people to be strong. And whether that means trusting your gut instincts, right? Standing up to something that you know is wrong, going back to work, as we've seen some people do, and they're getting arrested, taking a stand for something that you know that to be morally right. That's an example of strength, and we're seeing less and less of that. So when we do see it, I'm always very pleased to see it, and I know that I'm constantly fighting for the truth, and a lot of flack. I catch a lot of flack because of that, but you know what? I go to bed and I feel good about myself because I'm not standing on the side of weakness.
Yeah, it's really well said. I mean, I always joke around here when someone says they're having a hard day. I'm like, what about D-Day, Like, what about, like you said, going across the English Channel knowing you got a 75% chance of living? That's a long day. So it's a great reference. And, you mentioned victimization. I found myself in the middle of this 2 weeks ago because all the London Real community was rallying around me because we're being persecuted and banned on YouTube. And I was like, wow, look at all this support. Look at all this love. Hashtag London Real Army trending. Got $1 million donated for our Freedom platform. And I had to stop myself when I put out a vlog and I said, well, hold on a second, guys. I am not a victim. I have never been a victim. My grandparents didn't raise me as a victim. And I don't want to play that game. And I could see how easy it is because you get those dopamine hits and everyone's feeling sorry for you. And I've never done that in my life. And I was just like coming out and saying, look, I own my decisions. I made my decision. Jocko Willink, extreme ownership. I'm taking ownership of this and I'm going to find a solution. I'm not going to sit here and cry. But it was something I had to catch myself. And I know that if maybe I was younger and I was surrounded in that victimization narrative culture where, back in my day, we used to celebrate heroes. Now we celebrate victims. I could easily fall down maybe a lifetime of being a professional victim. And I mean, I think we see a lot of this these days.
Yeah, you see a lot of it, and it's so easy because the left just offers you, so many options to be a victim. I mean, look at me. I'm a woman. I'm Black. I win. You know what I mean? The only thing I'm missing is like being somehow disabled, and then like you get every single victim card and every single accolade. And I think that it is easy and it's tempting because the other route is hard. It's hard to be responsible for yourself. It's hard to take ownership and to say I did something wrong. It's hard to say, you know what? Yesterday wasn't a good day, but I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to, take ownership over my life and try to have a better day today. Life is hard. And that's kind of like, that's sort of, we're all in this. It's hard. Nobody feels their best every single day. Sometimes you just kind of want to throw in the towel. And some people just go, you know what, rather than trying, rather than taking ownership, rather than realizing that situation that I am in is largely because of myself, I'm going to go the victim route. And the left is here saying that it's because I'm Black. The left is here saying it's because I'm gay. The left is here saying it's because I'm disabled. I'm just going to take that. The truth is that you can take that route, but it always leads to misery. Because I have this thing that like you can lie to the whole world, you can get into a group of people and like, hear that lie perpetuated 1,000 times, but you're alone at some point with your own thoughts. We're all alone. We're all really alone. Even when you're married, you got kids, you're still alone, right? There's still just you. You're going to die alone, right? And hopefully when you're 95, sorry guys. But those thoughts are that something's not right and that you could have done something better and that you failed yourself. And the best thing you can aspire to do in life is to work hard, to take the hardship that comes with that, to take ownership, and to go to bed knowing, you know what, I worked really hard and I triumphed the hardships that every single person in the world goes through. And that's sort of how I live my life as a conservative. I know things could have been better if I had grown up in a cushion of luxury and I had grown up wealthy. Things could have been easier. But it's actually much more rewarding to have come from where I came from, to come from poverty, and to have worked my butt off my entire life, and to be in the situation I am in today. So I always try to encourage people to follow that example. Go the path that seems a little bit rougher, because it feels better in the end.
Yeah, it's such a powerful message. And I want to find out more about you and Blexit, and also, you know, how you came across this idea to, again, you mentioned fear before, which is interesting you're saying that, because with the coronavirus, you can see how this fear is being weaponized against people. And like, I'm obviously not African American, and so you're saying when it comes to election time, it's a very normal thing to push fear into the community and use that as a tool for manipulation. And yet you came out and said, hold on a second, this is wrong. I mean, can you talk about, first of all, how you first came up with that thought, and then you must have gotten so much backlash for that.
I did. So, I mean, my story it's kind of a long one, which we could take a whole episode on. But really, the Trump's election cycle really woke me up to what was what. And I had not considered myself to be politically inclined. I had never really considered my own politics. I had accepted my own politics, meaning that I accepted that I had to be on the left because I was Black. I accepted that I had to be a Democrat because I was Black. And that was an acceptance that was, it was almost a form of long hypnosis, because you learn that through the public education system. You take that in via culture, you know, all of your icons. You got Beyonce and Jay-Z. I'm with her on stage with Hillary. You've got the narrative of the mainstream media that if Trump wins, every woman's going to get gouged by her pussy. You've got the Black Lives Matter narrative that if Trump wins, all the KKK members are going to grab their shotguns, put on their own hoods, and come and get you. So it's very easy to fall into that, and to be hypnotized and just believe the left is telling the truth and they're fighting for your rights, because that's literally the only thing that you're getting your entire life if you are just going through regular life, the school system and TV, right? Not pursuing alternative voices. But because I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop music, I knew that Trump was loved. So that was my first gut instinct, that I was like, he couldn't have been a racist, because he's in tons of hip hop songs. Everybody wanted to be like Trump. There was a Beyonce and Jay-Z song about being poolside at Mar-a-Lago, which is an exclusive club. Like, he was a symbol of status. And he was also on TV. He's the guy that says you're fired. And he had never been accused of the media, who was perpetuating his success and had him on TV, of being a racist. So I just sort of, again, gut instinct, like, that just can't be true. Did you miss it? Like, you know, the whole first 70 years of his life, you just, like, everybody missed that he actually just hated everyone. He hated Jewish people, Black people, women. Like, we just missed that the entire time? Or is this, like, you know, just sort of election engineering? And so my gut instinct was that this man isn't a racist. And then I would actually just go pursue things that he said in their entire context, because they would always strip it. You know, it would be Black people, what do you have to lose? And they'd add their context, saying that he was saying that all of us were living in poverty. And then I'd go watch the full speech and I say, well, he didn't say that at all. He's asking a very valid question. You know, you've been married to the Democrat Party for the last 60 years. Your communities aren't doing well, which is true. Your men are incarcerated. What do you have to lose by taking a chance on me? And then I just started to actually say, now I'm interested in politics. And I started to listen to people that I would have never listened to in the past, Black conservatives who I thought were all Uncle Toms and Coons, you name it. And I came across Thomas Sowell. He is literally, if there is one book that I tell every person to read, it's Race and Intellectuals. And he will just really wake you up very quickly to the race narrative and how dishonest it is, and how the intellectuals, the academia, and the intelligentsia have always been wrong about everything. How the Harvard people brought us eugenicism. They were the ones that believed that your race sets your IQ, that if you were from, you know, the Eastern Europe versus whether you were from Western Europe, your racial, your IQ destiny was already determined. And they believed that Italians and Germans were stupid, and they came up with this idea of eugenicism, and they were the ones that came up with Planned Parenthood and abortion, because they literally wanted to make sure that dumb people couldn't procreate and couldn't reproduce. And there was this novel written in the 19th century called The Passing of the Great Race. It was the biggest book of its time, written by a man named Madison Grant, who was a Yale graduate, grew up in New York City, an elitist. exist. And it went viral. It was translated in various languages and quite faithfully translated into German, and Hitler called it his Bible. So our intellectuals inspired Hitler and him in believing in the Aryan race. So these people that come around and say, I'm a Harvard this, or I'm a Harvard that, or, I'm a Stanford this, or an Oxford that, his book just really takes you through how they've always gotten it wrong, and they've never had to pay for being wrong, right? They just keep writing more papers and keep telling the rest of us that we're stupid. And back in the time of eugenicism, they said anybody that disagreed with them was called a sentimentalist. Oh, you're so sentimental that you think other people have more potential, but they don't. We have to protect the white Nordic race. And then now they call people racist that disagree with them, right? You're just a racist, so you don't understand that we have to do these ridiculous things like affirmative action, which I'm staunchly against, the minimum wage, which I'm staunchly against, because again, I now understand that these things were authored by people that are hurting. It's hurting people that it claims to help. So I have just.
How does it hurt people? For people that wouldn't get that right away, they'd be like, well, these people are given more opportunities, or they're getting there paid more. How does it ultimately hurt them?
So first we talk about the minimum wage. Minimum wage, the whole idea is that like you establish minimum wage and it helps people because they're making more money. Well, actually the history of the minimum wage was that it was created to actually price minorities out of the market. So they wanted minimum wage because they felt that Black people in this country, the first federal minimum wage act that was passed was called the Davis-Bacon Act, and it was passed in 1931. 1930 was the last time that Black Americans had a lower unemployment rate than white Americans. We were actually more employed than white Americans in the 1930s. And the reason for that was because Black people were saying, we'll do the job at a lower rate. So in Congress, they argued and they said Black people are pricing white construction people out of the market, and we need to have a minimum wage to protect this, so that if you tell business owners they have to pay this amount, they would prefer to hire a white person. And that's exactly what they did. It priced, the same was, it was meant to price Chinese people out of the market, Chinese immigrants. Harvard people wrote extensively about why they supported the Minimum Wage Act. It was the same in Australia. I mean, all over the world. The Minimum Wage Act was meant to price lower people, to price minority people out of the markets. And that's exactly what it does. Right. So when you establish Minimum Wage Act, I'm a small business owner. I can tell you how much I can afford to pay people. If you then force my hand and tell me, Candace, you've got to pay your employees $100,000 a year, I'm just going to hire less employees. Right. And I'm going to hire people that are more skilled. So low wage, low skilled workers get priced out of the market because you say, I got to pay $100,000. Fine. I'm going to hire someone that's a Harvard graduate. I'm not going to hire this kid from high school and give him a chance. And that's exactly what happens. You can look at the empirical data and know that's true. Affirmative action. There's not a single piece of empirical proof that affirmative action helps Black people, and there's tons of proof that it hurts Black people because it's when you put people in schools that they're mismatched in, right? Just because I'm Black doesn't mean that I should be allowed to go into Harvard. And if you force me and put me in there because you're trying to hit some quota of X amount of Black people, what it actually shows is those kids are at the bottom of their class and they flunk and they tend to be on academic probation. Mind you, those kids are very intelligent. Right? If you would actually put them in a school that they were meant to be in, they'd be at the top of their class, right? But because you mismatch them and say, I'm going to put you in this school, the free market ideas takes them out. And there's tons of empirical data that shows that. I know Clarence Thomas has fought for that on the Supreme Court to throw that away. It's a form of racism. You assume that these kids aren't capable of getting into schools based on their own merit. And
to continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.